Welcome to the Bill Cartwright Show. My special guest today is journalist, broadcaster, contributor, Mark Lewis. Mark, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Bill, for having me on. It's been a while. When you coached down with the Suns, it was good to see you down here play a little golf, some tournaments down here, and you carried us, of course. And nobody thinks 7'2" can in the club. It's a really nice swing.
There's a few of us. We practice a little bit. This is actually flip the script here a little bit. I'm on the other end, so I'm kind of used to it. I kind of like it right now. So why don't we go to rock and roll from here? This is what I'd like for you to do. We're going to get to know you really, really quickly. I wanted you to talk about where you grew up, and I want you to talk a little bit about mom and dad.
Well, I grew up in Sacramento, not far from where you did, but we were in different schools in the district. So we moved there in 1964. My dad was the vice principal and going to Rudder, which is one of the junior highs. But he went to Kerr initially to work with Matt Moore's dad to get ready for Rudder Junior High School to open. My folks were both from Southern California, but we moved to Sacramento in 64 and we stayed there until I went to Idaho State, which was in 74. And you had 1 year left at high school at Elk Grove.
I want you to talk about those Elk Grove years a little bit. And I know kind of what kind of kids you were, but just talk about that. What were you thinking about in high school?
I think I was unlike most kids in high school, probably a little careless and cavalier in some ways, but big sports fan always was when I was a kid growing up. And played South Sacramento, Bayreuth, which is in our area, Gary Darling, who became a Major League Baseball umpire with Burbank. Of course, James Donaldson, who you played with in the league, was at Burbank. But I was always into sports, so I was wanted to play at Elk Grove, but I was wanted to play quarterback. And by happenstance, I got hurt in my junior year as a sophomore, so I had to sit on the sidelines and run figure eights around the goalpost, try to strengthen my knee. And then as a junior, I got the ability to start and started the rest of my 2 years there. We weren't anything like you guys were on the court. But we had some guys who were good athletes. I like the camaraderie. I'm sure you're used to that as well, the team. And it was a lot of fun to compete at that level. And I realized that I really didn't have the skill set to play in the Pac-8, which it was at that time. My cousin coached at Stanford. So I went to Chico, which was a small D2 school, and played there as a freshman, redshirted, and then went back and just punted my senior year. So that's the end of my athletic exploits. And I decided, hey, listen, if you can talk about sports for a living because you have no game, why not do that? So I did that and had a third-year career in sports podcasting.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because that's not something, is that something you knew you wanted to do when you were in college? Because you hit the ground running.
Well, it's actually because when I was 12 years old, I asked for a tape recorder, and they used to have those little reel-to-reel tape recorders. And so I took that. They gave it to me, my folks did, for Christmas. I practiced doing play-by-play with Russ Hodges and a lot of the Giants announcers and the A announcers at that time. Those are the games that we got. And so I kind of knew this would be a fun thing to do, but I had never thought it would be in television. I thought it probably would be in radio. However, when I went to Idaho State, I was fortunate enough to do an internship at KCRA, which was the ABC station in Sacramento. And that kind of catapulted me on the career in sports podcasting that started in July of 1979, right when CNN and ESPN started.
Can you talk about some really, let's say you're a young guy starting out, talk about some really cool people that you were able to interview. Were you intimidated by that, or were you ready for it?
I think initially when I got to my first pro town, it was different than Pocatello. Obviously, we didn't have a high caliber for athletics, even at Idaho State. I had the misfortune of being the host for the coaches show. We were 0-11. Football team was it, but so it was tough to find things to talk about. But ironically, Dirk Cutter, who wound up being a coach here at ASU and then with the Falcons, Tampa Bay, with several different NFL destinations, he was a quarterback at Idaho State at the time, and his father was the football coach of record in high school there, Jim Cutter, and he's still alive. And so I got to get my feet wet there. And actually, remember, I don't know if you recall this, but as a rookie, I taught my station manager and let me take the car down to Salt Lake and interview you when you came to play the Jazz the first time through, way back when. I think it was in 1979. It had to be, or it would have been in the early part of 1980.
Yeah, those were the fun days. So you ended up going to Arizona and working. How did that happen?
Well, our business is pretty transient. You always try to work your way up in market size based on, the market share. And so I was fortunate enough to get to Dallas in 1984 and spent 4 years there, my wife there, but was looking for a change, found a job here in Phoenix, a great station, which was an NBC station here. And that was in 1987. And worked there 15 years and then got hired by one of the Native American casinos to host a talk show out of one of their lounges. And we had more national athletes as well as the local ones. And of course, working at the ABC station, we had Carl Barkley's show. I was in the locker room when the Diamondbacks won the World Series in 2001. That was extraordinarily gratifying to be a part of a team like that, albeit on the other side of the microphone, to get to know guys like Gonzo and a lot of great Randy Johnson, Schilling. We had a lot of great players on that team. And it was fun to keep your hand in sports without actually, being in it on a day-to-day basis.
Now, did you develop any friendships with any of those guys, or were able to see those guys maybe outside of work?
I tried to leave them alone and try to respect their, position outside of work. Charles did become, and Marine, pretty good friend because we did his show. And he's still a good friend. In fact, he goes into my youngest daughter, manages a breakfast and lunch place, and he goes in there and eat protein pancakes with Maureen, and struck up a friendship with my daughter, and it's been very gratifying. But, to be honest with you, Bill, I try to respect the boundaries. I try to, let individuals have their lives outside of their workplace. But that doesn't mean I became very close to Gonzo, Luis Gonzalez too. Just a wonderful guy, still works for Diamondbacks. Still many friendships, people who work in the Suns organization that I still know, believe it or not, in management. Julie Fye, who's the director of media relations, has been there for almost 30 years. She's done a great job. People like that unheralded that help you guys sift through all us knuckleheads coming after you and wanting to get interviews day after day after day.
Which organization has a lot more access and just really looks for media outlets, and which is a little harder?
I think at the time I was involved, it was probably like the Coyotes who came here from Winnipeg, relocated, were looking to get a lot of publicity. The locker room was open all the time. And Canadian athletes, these guys skate, they're just the most down to earth, really good guys. But I'll tell you, that locker room stinks, man. They wear like 20 pairs of pads. You go in there and you better be prepared for the onslaught of the smell. But from an organizational standpoint, I think anybody in those days, it was a lot different because social media wasn't as pervasive as it is now. So you had an opportunity to create some relationships and develop some bonds as long as you didn't burn your bridges and you were able to utilize information from players or coaches and never really talk about who your sources were, then they get respect for you, I think, and that's how you develop a kind of a professional relationship to see exactly what was going on behind the scenes.
You've had, in just reading, a lot of different jobs, and I'm curious how the progression of that works.
Well, when I left the NBC station here and got hired as a freelancer to work for Casino Arizona, which is one of the larger footprints here in the Native American casino community, I started kind of an independent career. I started my own business, had my own production company. I worked for Major League Baseball, did a lot of production work for them in terms of creating videos and primers on right after the Boston Marathon bombing. New security measures went in fact. So utilized skill sets that I developed in the media to try and hit my shingle out there. But then I got into the medical space because I really enjoy helping people. And I worked in hospice for a while, and very gratifying, because I really do believe that, death is a transition. If I be of some solace or help to a family member that are going through a very difficult time, it can be very gratifying. And in fact, my business partner and I have developed a pilot for a television show on the near-death experience, because people who have crossed over and come back have recounted some amazing stories about not having to fear death, because of modern medicine's resuscitative efforts now, and be able to bring people back from the other side. There's a lot more of the stories that are out there. And so we're blessed to have a host who had a death experience himself, lost his wife, his infant child. And we consider this, it's called Alive Again, the name of the show. And we call this the death experience meets America's Most Wanted, because John Walsh, who's been the host of America's Most Wanted for 40 years, his son Adam was murdered in 1979. He was never a TV guy, was passionate about finding his son's killer, and he was able to do that. The Fox network at that time was just starting. They offered him that position, and he's doing the show still 40 years later. So our host is Jeff Olson. He's had a near-death experience. He can identify with it. He can bring some personal observations about the experience of the show, and so excited about the prospect of that being picked up by either a streaming platform or production house.
Talk about some of the differences, or what are the differences now? Let's say you're a young journalist and you're going to start out. What's different about being a journalist now compared to when you came in?
I think now, and I think about this a lot because a lot of my friends talk, they're so polarized. The country's so polarized now, from a media perspective. You're either with us or against. And I think what happened, Bill, is when we went to a 24-hour news cycle, when cable became so dominant, CNN, Fox, and all of the rest of the online platforms, Huffington Post, Drudge, etc. They're content crazy, but they're driven by editorial narratives. Because let's face it, there's not that much news to fill a 24-hour news block. So now I had all these opinion individuals, Jim Rome in sports, other individuals like him who are very polarizing, Skip Bayless, who was a columnist in Dallas when I was down there. They're in there just to stir it up. They want to be provocative. They want people to engage with it because that's more clicks, and more clicks means more revenue. But it doesn't necessarily lead to the truth. Right? I mean, if you gave me a story like, hey, Mark, this is happening, blah, 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 keep an eye on it. This may be something big down the road. Do you want me to talk about it now, Bill? No, I prefer you just sit on it for a while because it's going to happen in a couple of weeks. We sit on it, maybe a couple of days out, you say, go ahead, run with it. I run with it, respect your wishes. No one gets hurt. The story still gets told. But because you cultivated a trust and a relationship with the source, you were able to break more things. Now, the news cycle is literally over in 12 to 24 hours. There's something brand new at the top of every page, trying to enhance you to click on that page. And again, that goes back to the revenue model. So the biggest difference, I think, there's very few big J journalists out there anymore. That's why I like sports, to be honest with you, because when I started in Idaho in 1979, they had me doing news. I didn't like going up to someone and saying, "How did you feel when your husband was killed in that car wreck?" That's none of my business. It's absolutely, I think, crossing a line that now is commonplace, and I think that's the biggest difference.
Well, as an athlete, everything's so different now to how the game's played. Really every sport, and it's really remarkable. What do you think about that? Are you still a big sports fan now, or have you seen any differences in it?
Yeah, I see a lot of differences, and I'm not fond of a lot of them. But I go back to old school teamwork, especially at the NBA level, something you can relate to. I mean, I look at these offensives now. I consider an offensive set to be come down and jack up a 39-foot three. There's no motion. I don't see a lot of set being run. I don't see back picks. I mean, fives aren't playing down low on the block anymore. Fives are like Porzingis. They're shooting threes. Hey, Bill, you could have shot threes, dude. You never even had to bang with anybody.
Well, don't worry. There's nobody on the post, so you don't have to worry about it.
No, nobody goes on the block anymore. So I think a lot of those idiosyncrasies of the game, to me, it's sad that they're gone. Although I look at a team like ours that's really captivated me, the Suns, how all these interchangeable parts all have a role. We don't have a star beyond Book and CP, but they defer too. They don't have a problem making a pass to a Crowder or and listening to Monty Williams and what he has to say. But Monty paid his dues too, right? I mean, in New Orleans, and him and DP3 got into by their own admission. Now they're older and wiser, and they're looking for the common good. So, yeah, the sports fan in me, I love being a sports fan and not having to run into the locker room, because I don't want to go into your locker room when you lost a 2-point game, that's really dramatic, and have to deal with, players who are upset, and rightfully so. I mean, you should have that inner sync. You should be able to cool off for a while.
Yeah, it is interesting where baseball, everybody's a home run hitter. Football, why have a running back? We throw the ball 1,000 times a game. And it's just really interesting. I think sports now. And because look, for me, it's hard not to judge it. I try not to. I try to enjoy it for what it is, but it's still a hell of a thing not to judge. What do you think?
Well, and if you want to go back to where the genesis of this happened in professional sports and collegiately, for that matter, I mean, look at what the NCAA is doing now. They're going to pay collegiate athletes. I mean, I understand to a degree that these kids bring a lot of money into the coffers of these athletic departments. I don't have a problem with the stipend, but how do you determine it? But getting back to the point I'm going to make with you, and I think you relate to this. I think the advent of ESPN, and as it grew and became more Herculean and dominated, then everybody wanted to be the poster guys. I want a poster somebody. I want to be the highlight on ESPN, right? I even advocated that. That's how they promoted it. So the guys on the team, or girls, or both, who are less cognizant of being a part of a team but want to stand out, they're the ones throwing the ball down, but they cost the team the win. Just because they get highlighted today on ESPN. So that's not necessarily a good thing, I don't think.
Well, it is a lot of hype, but we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have there was just highlights on ESPN. So we didn't have all the media stuff. We just had just pure sport. And what's interesting? When I first went to the Knicks, there was no cheerleaders and there was no music during the timeout. So everything is changed.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's all theatrical now. Like you're going to a show in Vegas, or and then the halftime $100,000 half-court shot. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think professional sports, unfortunately, has become a corporate endeavor, because if you want to get season tickets to a Diamondbacks or the Suns or the Cardinals, which they have less games, 8 to 10 games, you're going to pay a pretty penny. So what happens now is corporations buy these tickets and use them as sales vehicles to lure prospects by taking to the game, taking them and having a good time. It almost prices the everyday fan the ability to take in a game in person, because if you're looking at tickets that are anywhere from 50 to 100 a piece, then you got parking, which could be up to $50. Then you go in and you have 4 beers, which could be $100, and you have hot dogs and pizza. You're looking at 5 bills to go to a game. You know, that's crazy.
It is really amazing right now how much money a family can spend just going to a game. That in itself is like an event.
Yeah. And I feel for a lot of these, because I didn't come from it. You didn't. We came from humble beginnings. My dad, your mom didn't even work when I was growing up. My dad was a school teacher. I mean, I think he came down to her for $14,000 a year. We didn't have the ability to go to Giants at these games, but they swept it up, and we would take the little league teams down there and we'd go watch the games. And it was really memorable for me as a young kid to be able to go to the Stick and watch, you know. I remember I got a foul ball from Dick Grote. I don't know if you remember Dick Grote. He played for Pittsburgh and for the St. Louis Cardinals. But I was coming back from the restroom, and we were on the 3rd deck at the Stick, freezing in July. And he fouled a ball off. It came careening past me. I ran over and got it. And I said, "Well, who was that?" They said it was Dick Grote. I said, "Oh man, I treated that like it was, you know, King's Diamonds."
That's funny. So, what's next for you? Do you have a great show on your mind? Something interesting that you've are going to unleash?
Well, I think, I don't know about unleashing, but we've been working on that project I told you about a couple minutes back, called Alive Again, and it's a half an hour to an hour television show that chronicles the life and impact of people who have crossed over, either been pronounced clinically dead or not, how it involved, it shaped spiritually the rest of their lives, almost to a person. Even kids who have these near-death experiences, they're profoundly affected by it. And, you know, in these days where there's so much with COVID and everything, people worrying about not being able to see a deceased relative who may have been, like your grandmother might have been in a facility where you couldn't have seen her before she passed, and is she okay? Well, if you watch this show, you see these meaningful stories about, you know, there's nothing to fear about that. The experience is one that is really unforgettable. And I look forward to telling those stories, but I can tell one story real quick. So in 7th grade, Bill Cartwright was dominant. So his 7th grade team got to play in 8th grade tournaments with us. And so we played you at Kerr. And I know I've told you this story before. So I got to jump center against you. At that time, I think you're 6'6". I probably was 5'10". There's no way I was going to win that jump. So I stepped on your foot, the opening tip. The ref called a technical, threw me out of the game. My coach is like, "What's going on?" And I said, "I didn't do anything." And he's like, he's mad at the ref, and you're just laughing. Of course, we went on to lose by probably 20 or 30 points, but it was just one of those funny stories, I think, that, you know, what else could I do? I couldn't out jump you. I had to try to be resourceful and see the ref wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, that does sound about right. Hey, Mark, you talked about a little bit. Talk about your family.
Well, my wife and I have been married. Let's see, this is 89. That's going to be 33 years in September. I met her on a blind date the day I accepted the Phoenix job. Unlike you and Sherry back in high school, when you guys, you know, had that relationship before you even went to USF, I didn't meet Susanna until I had already accepted this job out here. Then we commuted for a year before she moved out here. Then we got married in 89. We have two daughters, 28 and 26. Marissa, who's 28, is getting married in a couple months. And my son-in-law to be is 6'2", 340.
Wow.
They met powerlifting, my daughter and him. They were both powerlifting. And so we're excited about that. And then I have a younger daughter, Erica, who's 26. She's the general manager of the food place USA I was telling you about here in town that Charles and Maureen like to go to. And I still have my mom. My mom's 87. She lives not too far from us here. We moved her up here a couple of years ago. And so we're blessed. Yeah. About your group, you have a lot more mouths to feed and grandbabies.
Well, okay. With my immediate family, I have 6 sisters. My dad's still hanging in. He's 89.
Wow.
I have 3 kids, or 4 kids. My youngest is my daughter, who's 35. There's 2 years difference. 3 boys, a little older. Each kid has 2 kids, so I have 8 grandkids, all boys.
All boys.
All boys. My oldest grandson is 18. The youngest is probably 9 months.
Wow.
So yeah, we've been busy. 42 years, same gal. So there's probably something really wrong with her.
Wow.
So
well, if anybody has met you guys, it really is pretty. It's very cute. Let's put it that way. That's what girls would say. Very cute, because Sherry, what is Sherry? 5'1"?
She'll say she's 5'3" or 4. We'll give her 5'4" and just leave it there.
Okay.
So she's
well, 5'4", but that's still a dramatic difference between you two. And no, it was always it's always been our mantra in our family that family is everything, right? I mean, sports is wonderful. It's given you a blessed life, but you worked your butt off to get to where you are. It was fun to have you down here for a couple of years. And we almost got your daughter that bridal shop, but she had other plans. I know. Probably getting married was one of them.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Mark is such a great guy that he could have gone to get his doctorate anywhere. So he came to Arizona, and I got it at Arizona State because my daughter was here. So.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a good man. He's been a great father.
Do the kids live in the Bay Area, or are they back in the Chicago?
They're 3 of the kids are all back in Chicago. Justin, my youngest son, James, and Kristen, they're in Chicago. My middle son is in Sacramento, Jason, with his bride, Sarita, and Nash and Liam. So one of 2 spots. So, but I still get back to Chicago pretty much every month, if not every other month. So it's just a lot of fun. But you're right, absolutely right. Family, strong, very, very strong.
Yeah. But, when I see your sisters on Facebook, and you need a what do they say? You need a roster to tell the Cartwright sisters. You got somebody. Dude, did you ever see the bathroom when you were growing up, or no?
Yeah, I got early. First one in and out. You had to do it.
Now, I remember seeing your dad. You brought your dad down here for a Suns game one time. I think it must have been in the playoffs in '93. And so that was that's when our oldest daughter was born, actually, 6/11/93, which was the day of game 2, when you guys won and took a 2-0 lead in the series over the Suns.
Yeah, that was fun. Actually, we should have won that game in Chicago. We ended up having to come back to Phoenix because Michael had the ball, and Kevin Johnson just took the ball from him. So we were very shocked.
I think did Marley hit 9 threes in Chicago or something against you guys?
Yeah.
But
you can never trust those guards.
Nobody covered Pax, and that was it.
Well, if you remember, we always thank Danny Ainge for double team Horace Grant on the post and leaving our best 3-point shooter open. So thanks, Danny Ainge.
Yeah, he's not lived that down in these parts and probably never will. But
funny. But Mark, thank you so much for being on. It was awesome. You know, I do
Yeah.
get down to Phoenix periodically, and we got to be able to go do something there. My old coach
Absolutely.
lives down there, Bob Gaylord.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
just let me know. And whenever you get down there, well, maybe we'll go play or go just have a good meal or whatever,
Both.
whatever works.